What if I told you that a short-haul workhorse jet, originally designed to fly domestic routes, is now crossing the Atlantic Ocean with ease? That's exactly what Airbus's A321 XLR is doing right now, and airlines around the world are lining up to get their hands on it. Airlines like Aer Lingus, Iberia, American, and JetBlue are already deploying narrow-body jets on transatlantic routes that were once reserved for wide-body aircraft. This is a revolution happening quietly in the skies above us. Now here's what makes it even more interesting. Boeing has a direct competitor to the A321, the 737 MAX family, and yet there is no long-range version of it anywhere on the horizon. Why would the world's most storied aircraft manufacturer simply watch as its rival reshapes the future of aviation without lifting a finger? That's the question we're here to answer today. Two giants, one playing field. To understand Boeing's dilemma, we first need to understand how the 737 MAX and the Airbus A320neo family compare to each other. On paper, these two jet families are remarkably similar. The MAX 9 and the A321neo are practically the same size. They both use engines from the CFM LEAP generation, and they both benefit from modern winglet technology that boosts fuel efficiency. Their ranges and passenger capacities are nearly identical, making them direct rivals in the short to medium-haul market that represents the backbone of global aviation. There are roughly 10,000 narrow-body jets operating worldwide today, and these two families dominate that segment almost entirely. For most of their history, they've been neck and neck to exceptional machines built for the same purpose. But while Boeing stayed the course, Airbus made a bold move that would quietly shift the balance of power in the aviation industry for decades to come. Airbus's masterstroke, the XLR revolution. Here's where the story gets fascinating. Airbus took the A321neo, already a capable jet, and stretched its potential far beyond what anyone initially imagined. They developed two extended-range derivatives, the A321LR and the A321 XLR, with a conformal fuel tank built directly into its belly. The XLR carries approximately 3,400 extra gallons of jet fuel, enough to push its range beyond 4,700 nautical miles. That's enough to fly from New York to Rome non-stop on a single-aisle aircraft. Why does this matter so much? Because it fills a gap in the market that has been empty since Boeing retired the 757 in 2004. The so-called mid-market segment, city pairs too long for standard, narrow bodies but too thin for wide-body economics, has grown dramatically. By 2024, Airbus had secured roughly 500 firm orders for the XLR, making it a powerful niche product, and right now Boeing has absolutely nothing to compete with it. The ground clearance problem, Boeing's ancient burden. So why can't Boeing simply do what Airbus did? The answer starts at the very bottom of the plane, literally. When Boeing's engineers designed the original 737 back in 1967, commercial airports were still primitive places. Jet bridges were rare, baggage belts were basic, and ground crews loaded passengers up old-fashioned air stairs. To make boarding easier, Boeing gave the 737 an unusually low stance. Its engines hang just inches from the tarmac. That low-riding design has been passed down through every generation of the aircraft, including the MAX. This creates an enormous problem when you try to add a belly fuel tank. Airbus managed to certify the XLR's conformal fuel tank, which sits exposed in the aircraft's belly, partly because the A320 family rides much higher off the ground. Regulators at the FAA and EASA were comfortable knowing there was a meaningful buffer between thousands of gallons of jet fuel and the runway surface. On the 737, that buffer barely exists, and in any gear failure scenario, the tank could scrape the tarmac at hundreds of miles per hour. The engineering maze, engines, tanks, and trade-offs. Even if Boeing could somehow solve the ground clearance problem, the engineering challenges don't stop there. The 737's narrower fuselage cross-section, about 5% smaller in diameter than the A320, means that any belly tank would hold roughly 400 gallons less fuel than the equivalent XLR tank. That's a significant performance gap before the aircraft even leaves the ground, and because of how cross-sectional area works mathematically, a 5% diameter reduction translates to nearly a 10% loss in usable belly space. Then there's the engine problem. The MAX already uses a modified, derated version of the CFM LEAP engine, one that had to be repositioned and reshaped, just to fit under the 737's low-slung wing. If Boeing adds a heavy fuel tank, the aircraft gets heavier, which demands more thrust, which means bigger engines, but there's no room for bigger engines without redesigning the wing entirely. Boeing would essentially be engineering its way into a corner with no clean exit in sight. The ghost of MCAS when history haunts the future. There's another dimension to this story that goes far beyond engineering. It's about trust, specifically, the trust between Boeing and the world's aviation regulators. Between October 2018 and March 2019, two Boeing 737 MAX aircraft crashed, killing 346 people. Investigations revealed that a software system called MCAS had malfunctioned, and that pilots had been given only a 2-hour online course to transition from the older 737NG to the MAX. Far too little training to handle an unexpected emergency. Those crashes reshaped the relationship between Boeing and the FAA permanently. Regulators today will scrutinize any major modification to the 737 MAX with extraordinary care. If Boeing introduced a new fuel system, new tanks, and potentially altered flight handling characteristics, the FAA would almost certainly require extensive new pilot training certifications. That would destroy one of the MAX's most powerful selling points, its shared type rating with the older 737 NG, which allows thousands of pilots to fly the MAX with minimal retraining. Boeing's own regulatory history has become a wall it cannot easily climb over. The business calculation: is it even worth it? Set aside every technical and regulatory obstacle for a moment. Even if Boeing could build a long-range MAX, the question remains, should they? Boeing's leadership has been remarkably candid about their view of the mid-market segment. They see it as a niche, not a gold rush. The legendary 757, beloved by airlines and passengers alike, never sold in enormous numbers precisely because the missions it was built for were too specific. And the XLR, despite owning 100% of its market segment, has sold only around 500 units, roughly 8 times fewer than the standard A321 neo. For comparison, Boeing has delivered over 1,737 MAX aircraft in recent years, with a backlog of thousands more. The mainstream narrow-body market is where the real volume lives. Meanwhile, the 737 MAX is already quietly doing impressive things. Flights from Brazil to Orlando and Newark to Lima push past 7 hours of flight time. Boeing believes those guaranteed revenue routes are worth more than chasing speculative transatlantic routes that have never proven profitable. The road ahead: Boeing's calculated patience. So where does this leave us? Boeing's plan appears to be one of deliberate patience. The company has been talking about a brand new aircraft internally referred to as the 797 or new midsize airplane for years. Designed from a clean sheet, this aircraft would have the right fuselage height, the right engine architecture, and none of the 737's accumulated compromises. If the mid-market continues to grow through the 2030s as analysts predict, Boeing wants to enter it with a purpose-built solution rather than an expensive patch on a 1960s design. Whether that gamble will pay off remains one of aviation's most compelling open questions. Airbus is gaining ground, airlines are committing to the XLR in growing numbers, and every year Boeing waits is a year its competitor builds a stronger foothold. What do you think? Is Boeing making the smart strategic play here, or are they missing a once-in-a-generation opportunity? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you love deep dives into the stories that shape our world, make sure you subscribe to the World Documentaries. There are many more incredible journeys ahead. We'd love to hear your experiences and insights. Drop them right below this video.